Greetings to all lovers of tales, myths, and legends. Helen of Troy is a heroine from ancient Greek epic, considered the most beautiful woman whose beauty sparked the Trojan War. The Trojan War is the most famous conflict of antiquity, depicted in Greek legends and modern films. Despite the active popularization of ancient culture, many aspects of the heroes' lives remain undisclosed to this day. Why did the Greeks actually attack Troy? How many times was Helen married? And what happened to her after the fall of Troy? Beautiful Helen is one of the main heroines of the legend of Troy, but few know her true story as described by ancient Greek authors. The girl was the daughter of the Spartan king Tyndareus and, as was customary in many royal households of that time, she was acknowledged as the illegitimate daughter of Zeus and the most beautiful girl in the Peloponnese. When Helen was 12 years old, Theseus, the king of Athens and the son of the god Poseidon, and a legendary hero of Attica, raided Sparta and kidnapped the girl. The man married the teenager, fathered a daughter with her, and then embarked on another heroic campaign from which he never returned. After some time, Helen was liberated by her brothers Castor and Pollux, who launched a retaliatory expedition to Attica. To prevent her daughter from interfering with her remarriage, Helen handed the child over to her older sister, Clytemnestra, the wife of the Mycenaean king. It should be noted that despite her slightly tarnished reputation, the girl managed to gather 37 suitors from all over Greece and Sparta. Among them were the legendary Odysseus, the comrade-in-arms of Achilles, Patroclus, and many other lesser-known names. The girl's attractiveness was further enhanced by the fact that with her would get the throne of Sparta. According to legend, the bride's father, Tyndareus, wanting to avoid offending anyone, demanded that the suitors form a military alliance among themselves. Once this was done, beautiful Helen, in some versions herself and in others at the urging of her father, chose Menelaus, the prince of Mycenae, as her husband. They had 2 children together, a daughter named Hermione and a son named Nicostratus. The story of the Trojan prince Paris could easily become the plot for a separate dramatic film. The pregnant mother of the hero had a dream that her future son would bring incredible disasters to the kingdom, so as soon as he was born, she ordered her servant to kill him. The servant couldn't bring himself to carry out the order, but he took the child far away from the palace to Mount Ida, where he left the boy to die. According to Hyginus, a wild dog found the baby, while according to Lycophron, it was a she-bear. Whatever the case may be, the animal took the child under its protection and nursed him with its milk. Later, a shepherd found the newborn and raised him as his own son. The boy grew up to be a handsome, strong, and courageous man. He engaged in sports, fought against bandits, married Oenone, and had children. Paris' fate changed when he decided to participate in the regional Olympic Games and became the champion of Asia in the pentathlon. During the competition, the royal family noticed him and upon learning his story, recognized him as their son. Unfortunately, once in the Trojan palace, Paris became arrogant. According to Euripides, he had a dream in which he found himself as a judge in a beauty contest between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. I have already discussed the events involving Aphrodite in a previous video. Let's refresh your memory a bit. Aphrodite was desired by both men and gods, but not all women liked their passions. Once, she was invited to a feast, but her former lover Ares was not invited, which offended his pride. Ares sent his companion, the goddess of discord, Eris, to the feast. Eris threw a golden apple onto the table with the inscription "To the fairest." Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena stood up to claim the apple. It was decided to turn to the mortal Paris, the son of King Priam, to choose who among the goddesses was the fairest. Paris couldn't make a choice, and that's when the promises began. Hera offered him kingship and the glory of a great ruler, while Athena promised to make him an invincible warrior. But Aphrodite offered Paris the most beautiful woman in the Peloponnese, Helen of Sparta, a woman who was already promised to another man. Without hesitation, Paris gave the apple to Aphrodite. In return, she took off her belt, which made her irresistible, and gave it to Paris. She then instilled a passion for him in the beautiful Helen. Whether it was a dream or reality is still unknown. But in any case, the prince drove away his former wife and set off for Sparta. The cause of the war was not only Helen's elopement with Paris. Along with the girl, the Trojan also stole all of Menelaus' treasures. However, beautiful Helen left her children with Menelaus in Sparta. Remembering the alliance they had formed, Menelaus gathered the former suitors of his wife and declared war on Troy. Historians still uncover interesting secrets regarding the Trojan War. Greek heroes, as well as the gods Hera and Athena, aided King Menelaus of Sparta. But the Trojans also received help from gods such as Artemis, Aphrodite, Ares, and Apollo. The war between the Greeks and the Trojans lasted for years, and the battles were bloody. However, it's not entirely accurate to believe that there were massive losses on both sides. In those times, battles were different. Initially, leaders entered the fight, and only later did the ordinary warriors from the lower hierarchy engage. Since the warriors' swords were made of bronze, they constantly needed replacement. Battles only took place during daylight, and when darkness fell, the fighters would retrieve the bodies from the field. The Greeks were on the verge of losing the battle if not for the enraged Achilles. It is believed that the invincible Achilles quarreled with the brother of the king of Sparta and refused to fight further. But his friend Patroclus entered the battle against the Trojans and perished. Achilles was enraged by this news, and he had to take up arms once again. In one of the battles, Achilles killed the murderer of his friend, Hector. This marked the beginning of the fall of Troy. When Achilles was killed, his armor passed to Odysseus. At that time, prophets predicted that the Greeks would not be able to take Troy by force but could still win through cunning. It was then that Odysseus devised a cunning plan and created the famous Trojan Horse. According to Odysseus' plan, the most skilled warriors would hide inside the giant horse, while the rest of the Greek forces would sail away and conceal themselves behind an island. Odysseus was confident that the Trojans would believe in their victory and bring the giant horse into their city, thus allowing the skilled warriors to enter Troy. The Trojans indeed believed in the Greeks' retreat and accepted the giant horse as a gift. One of the priests of Troy warned the Trojans not to trust the Greeks' gifts, but the people rejoiced and believed in their victory. Later, it was decided to place the giant horse in front of Athena's temple. There are many theories about the size of the Trojan horse mentioned in the ancient legend. Some speculate that it was so enormous that it couldn't be carried through the city walls, while others believe it was on a larger scale, but it still allowed the warriors to go inside Troy. According to the first version, in order to bring the giant horse to the temple, the people of the city had to dismantle part of the wall. When Troy celebrated victory throughout the night, the warriors emerged from the giant structure and opened the gates. This allowed the Greeks to enter the invincible city without much trouble. The wooden Trojan horse became a symbol of betrayal and deceit. It serves as a reminder of how naivety and trust can lead to defeat. Due to this historical event, the phrase Trojan horse has become synonymous with describing deception or hidden threat. We learn about the deaths of the heroes of the Trojan War from the accounts of the adversaries. For example, the Trojans liked to depict their amphory with the image of Ajax the Great carrying Achilles out of the battlefield. The Greeks, on the other hand, enjoyed making reliefs depicting the removal of Hector from the battlefield. Hector was a prince of Troy and, after fighting for a year, he returned to Phrygia with his army, where he was buried by both the Trojans and the Greeks. Paris also did not survive the 10-year conflict. He was wounded by a poisoned arrow in one of the battles. The prince sought help from his former wife, Oenone, but she refused to aid him. It is worth noting that deep down, Oenone still loved him. Upon learning of Paris' death, she took her own life. And what about Helen? King Priam of Troy married her off to Paris' brother, Prince Deiphobus. When Troy was already burning, Deiphobus died in battle, and Menelaus roamed the streets in search of his stolen wife. His initial desire was to kill Helen with his sword. However, the woman played a clever move. She approached Menelaus naked. The Spartan king couldn't bring himself to kill the beauty. He forgave her and took her back to Greece. Ancient authors describe the subsequent events differently. According to Ptolemy Hephaestion and Stesichorus, Helen did not survive the journey home, she perished along the way. According to Pausanias, the woman did manage to reach home and peacefully lived out her days, reaching old age. The version by Polyaenus appears more dramatic. Upon arrival in Sparta, Menelaus died, and Helen was simply expelled from the polis. She fled to the island of Rhodes to her friend Polyxo. However, the princess overlooked the fact that Polyxo had lost her husband in the Trojan War. Blaming Helen for it, Polyxo ordered her servants to hang her. The version by Theocritus is even more gruesome. The people of Rhodes stoned beautiful Helen to death. However, the story of the heroine doesn't end there. After her death, the gods married her to Achilles. The couple lived in Elysium, the equivalent of the Christian paradise. It is worth noting that Menelaus was also there, but his reaction to the gods' decision remains unknown. Although there is no exact description of Helen of Troy's appearance, there is a general understanding of her in literature and art. She is often portrayed as a tall, slender, and graceful woman with golden or auburn long hair, sparkling eyes, and exquisite facial features. Her beauty is described as extraordinary and captivating. And that's it for today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next videos.